Hello there, very good evening and welcome to the news tonight here on Rajya TV. I'm Tracy Shilshi and in the next 30 minutes I'll be getting you the day's top story from India and across the world. So let's start with the headlines. Civil aviation draft policy unveiled, 2% levy on all air tickets proposed. Also proposal to raise FDI and domestic carriers made. Beef controversy reflects in Moody's review. Ratings agency cautions the Modi government that it will lose credibility if it does not check provocative comments. Tamil Nadu police slapped sedition charges on folk singer for criticizing Chief Minister J. Jayalalitha. Campaigning for the fourth phase of polls in Bihar ends. Party bigwigs rally to woo voters. And Women's Court in Mumbai awards death sentence to convict Chandraban Sanap in the rape and murder of software engineer Esther Anuya. The top story, Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj held bilateral talks with her counterparts from Somalia, Angola, Gambia and other countries. She discussed matters of bilateral and regional importance with them. Meanwhile, a day after the third India-Africa Forum Summit ended in New Delhi, the government assessed the gains from the summit. Here's a report.
A historic occasion in India's relationship with 54 African nations. The government is hoping the India-Africa Summit will be an opportunity for small investors to build on the cooperation between both sides.
Whole of Africa was with India on one platform. They have signed 2 documents which expresses the future contours of the partnership that India and Africa will have. And you know, Africa is rich in minerals. Africa has a very young demographic profile. Africa has certain needs. We have certain strengths. We have certain needs. Africa has certain strengths. And the idea is how the two can be meshed together and it become a win-win partnership for both sides.
It was the third such summit for India and Africa. The next one will be held in Africa in 2020. India is expecting that besides trade, both sides will put up a united stand on the global stage.
The whole idea of this summit was to get India and Africa on the same page on a whole host of issues. When it comes to international issues, whether it is trade issues pertaining to WTO, whether it is climate change issues pertaining to the COP21, whether it is security and international relations issues pertaining to reform of the United Nations and institutions of global governance, it is important.
India has pledged a concessional credit of over $10 billion and an assistance of $60 crore over the next 5 years. Further, it will give scholarships to 50,000 students in Indian universities. All this is in addition to the $9.4 billion loan that India has already advanced. Akhilesh Suman's report for Rajya TV.
Well, for more on this story, we've got Mr. K.P. Nair, who's the consulting editor with The Telegraph, joining us, in fact, in studio this evening. Mr. Nair, what, according to you, were the key highlights of this summit?
Well, from our point of view, India's point of view, we can look back with great satisfaction that we can do something on this scale, you know. I mean, after the fiasco of the Commonwealth Games, there was a lot of apprehension whether we would be able to do this. This is actually getting together 1/3 of the actual de facto UN membership during the General Assembly. General Assembly, about 140 heads of state attend. Here we had 54 countries participating, 40 at very, very high levels. So we can look back with satisfaction that we did it. And as a matter of fact, we should look back at the logo of the summit. It's a great logo, you know. Unfortunately, not enough attention has been paid to the logo.
Yes.
It has 2 parts. They've got one Indian lion, one African lion.
Yes.
I mean, India and Africa both have lions, and it has been fused into a single face because lion represents boldness, pride. The option, I understand, was to have an elephant, but the idea was discarded because elephant is very slow in movement. But the summit is intended to send a message of joint action, swift action.
Yes.
And I think the logo's motto has been realized in the summit because it is also described in the logo that this is a reinvigorated partnership, you know.
Yes.
So overall, I think we can look back with satisfaction that the summit has been successfully concluded.
Absolutely. Barring, of course, those traffic jams that we saw across, especially parts of central Delhi.
Actually, traffic jams, we shouldn't overplay this. Because in New York, when there is a General Assembly,
except
nothing
newspapers,
moves,
we didn't see much of the traffic jams being
reported.
reported. Absolutely. But, you know, since you were, of course, focusing on, you did highlight the fact of this swift movement that both nations, for that matter, all the nations were focusing on, India and the African nations. You know, the next summit to be held in 2020, that will, of course, be held in Africa. But till that time, what is it that India is hoping to achieve?
Well, I was trying to go through the summit declaration and also the details of the strategic partnership. One is 10 pages, the other is 11 pages, closely typed in A4 size paper, which means we have a whole agenda ahead. And one of the good things that the summit decided was that the next one will only be held 5 years from now. Previously, it was always 3 years, 2008, 2011. So this gives us 5 years to actually implement what has been decided. And that is very important, because what we need to do before the next similar summit is to ensure that at least 50 to 60% of what has been decided in Delhi has been done. So that should be the priority now.
All right. You know, quite a bit of the focus was also on trade, you know, because not just from the Indian side as well, as far as, you know, perceptions are concerned or what type of expectations there were. You know, also the global community, most of the things that they were focusing upon were trade relations between both the sides, considering, of course, how Africa is so rich in those natural resources. You know, so do we see, Philip, do we see a stepping up of trade relations between India and the African nations?
Actually, the trade figures give a misleading perception of what lies ahead, you know, because what is happening in international trade is that while countries like India and some of the African countries are concentrating on FTAs, free trade agreements, bilaterally or regionally, the big powers, the big economic powers like the US, Europe, Japan, they are creating mega trade blocks. There is already the Trans-Pacific Partnership. What lies ahead is the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership.
Yes.
You know, both India and Africa are out of these, which means that global trade, 65% of global trade is going to be cornered by these two groups, TPP and the new Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which means both India and Africa are going to suffer hugely because they are left out of it unless they get their act together and work together. So this summit, which has laid some sort of a framework for increasing trade, is a very good effort to make sure that both India and Africa have their place in the sun as far as global trade is concerned.
All right. On that positive note, we'll end it here. Thanks so much, Mr. Nair, for joining us on this story. Heading on to more national news, and the much-awaited civil aviation draft policy was unveiled in the capital today. Several proposals have been made by the government, prominent among them being a 2% levy on all air tickets to help fund the regional connectivity scheme. A proposal to raise FDI in domestic carriers has also been made.
To make flying affordable for the common man, the government has come up with several proposals in a draft civil aviation policy. The policy was unveiled by the Civil Aviation Ministry on Friday with the purpose to boost regional connectivity. The new policy suggests a 2% levy on airfares on trunk routes to subsidize air travel to underserved and unserved destinations. It also proposes 50% FDI in domestic carriers. Among the other measures, the policy proposes the setting up of no-frills airports at over 401 unused airstrips across the country. These would be developed at an estimated cost of around 50 crore rupees each. The policy also suggests capping fares at 2,500 rupees for 1-hour flights under the regional connectivity scheme.
We invite suggestions from the stakeholders, from the public, because this involves the people of the country. and all those suggestions that come in, we'll be looking at it.
Among other things, the draft policy proposes to rationalize jet fuel costs, promote air cargo, maintenance, repair and operations through fiscal and regulatory concessions, and frame separate regulations for promoting helicopter operations. To make MRO, that is maintenance, repair and overhaul, cheaper, the government has proposed to exempt such activities from the service tax net and not levy any VAT.
It should be a policy which takes flying to masses. It should no longer confine flying only to the elite class of the people. It should take flying to the masses. In keeping with that directive of Honorable Prime Minister, we have attempted to create this policy.
However, the government has decided to seek more comments from stakeholders before taking a final call on 520 norms, whereby local airlines can fly overseas only when they have 5 years operational experience and a fleet of at least 20 aircraft. The draft policy would be put up for comments for the next 3 weeks. With Navikram Singh, Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
On to politics, and accusing the BJP of arrogance, the Shiv Sena today threatened to pull out of the NDA alliance. Addressing a civic election rally in Mumbai, Sena chief Uddhav Thackeray lashed out at the Fadnavis government, accusing it of humiliating his ministers. Party Minister Eknath Shinde, who holds the public undertaking portfolio, even offered to resign at the rally. Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis dismissed the episode as a drama. The latest development, though, marks a new low in the troubled relationship of the two allies in Maharashtra. Moody's has become the first major global institution to comment on the recent political controversies in India. In a report on India's outlook, Moody's Analytics says that it is important for Prime Minister Narendra Modi to keep fringe elements in check or risk losing credibility. However, it also clarifies that the report does not reflect the opinions of Moody's Investors Service, the global credit ratings agency.
The controversies surrounding beef has focused international attention on India. Referring to the ethnic tensions in the wake of these controversies, rating agencies Moody's has said that the Prime Minister must keep BJP members in check or risk losing domestic and global credibility. The comments were made in a report titled India Outlook Searching for Potential by Moody's Analytics, the Economic Research and Analysis Division of Moody's Corporation. The report says, while Modi has largely distanced himself from the nationalist jibes, the belligerent provocation of various Indian minorities has raised ethnic tensions. Along with a possible increase in violence, the government will face stiffer opposition in the upper house as debate turns away from economic policy. Modi must keep his members in check or risk losing domestic and global credibility. In the report, Moody's Analytics has projected India's GDP growth for the September quarter at 7.3% and for the full fiscal at 7.6%. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
In other news, Tamil Nadu cybercrime police have arrested a folk singer S. Sivadas alias Kovan for allegedly making derogatory remarks against Chief Minister J. Jayalalitha. The 45-year-old singer had demanded closure of liquor shops in the state. Here's a report.
Folk artist Kovan was detained by the Chennai police allegedly for criticizing the Jayalalitha government. He had recently released a song on alcoholism, blaming the Jayalalitha government. His lawyer said he faces charges of sedition and attempt to create enmity between groups.
He sang a song against government and liquor shop, and he made some statements regarding the government and its act. They are protesting, they are suppressing the protests of the people. In this song, that's why they filed sedition and other criminal charges against him.
Kovan belongs to the MKIK group, whose supporters protested against his detention. His song protests about the rising prices of education and food in the state, for which he holds the chief minister responsible. Elsewhere, he appeals to the ruling party to shut down liquor shops that have ruined the state. Opposition parties, including the DMK, have been calling for a ban on liquor in the state. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now let's head to Bihar, where campaigning for the fourth phase of assembly polls ended this evening. Prime Minister Narendra Modi wound up the campaign for NDA with 2 rallies, while Chief Minister Nitish Kumar and RJD Supremo Lalu Prasad did the job for the Grand Alliance. 55 constituencies in 7 districts will go to polls in the 4th phase on the 1st of November. 12 seats in East Champaran, 11 in Muzaffarpur, 9 in West Champaran, 8 each in Siwan and Sitamarhi, 6 in Gopalganj and 1 seat in Shohar will go to polls in this phase. A total of 776 candidates are in the fray, with maximum number of 30 candidates contesting from Kurni Assembly seat, while the minimum of 7 candidates each are contesting from Harsidhi and Kesaria Assembly constituencies. Polling has already been held in 131 Assembly seats in the first 3 phases, which was held on the 12th, 16th and 28th of October. Polling for the 5th phase will now take place on the 5th of November, while counting of votes will be done on the 8th. With that, let's get you some more national news updates in Nationwide. The Delhi High Court today cancelled the AAP government's decision to get the accounts of 3 private power distribution companies audited by the CAG. Meanwhile, Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal also said that the order is a temporary setback and the Delhi government will soon file an appeal in the Supreme Court. A special women's court in Mumbai sentenced to death Chandraban Sanap for the rape and murder of software engineer Esther Anuya. Sanap was convicted on Tuesday. The Mumbai Sessions Court termed it as a rarest of rare case. In separate attacks, Naxals allegedly set ablaze 12 vehicles, including 2 passenger buses and some trucks in Chhattisgarh's Kanker and Bijapur districts. No casualties were reported in the incident. Violent protests broke out in Srinagar today when security forces stopped a funeral prayer for slain Lashkar-e-Toiba commander Abu Qasim. He was killed in an encounter in South Kashmir on Thursday. Security across the valley has been beefed up and random checkpoints have been set up to stop any militants sneaking into the city. With that, a quick break here. Up next, we're getting international news. Stay with us.
Faced with an aging workforce, China discontinues its one-child policy. Is it time to dump the Malthusian theory? Is the world today confident of trumping population growth? Watch The Big Picture at 9:30 p.m. on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. Let's get you some international news now. And adding to the recent spate of violent attacks in Jerusalem, 2 Palestinians attacked soldiers at an Israeli checkpoint near the West Bank on Friday. The 2 Palestinians on motorcycles attacked some Israeli paramilitary police personnel with knives. They wounded 1 policeman before being shot at. One of the Palestinian attackers was killed and the other was critically wounded. In a similar incident, a Palestinian was shot and critically wounded by security guards after carrying out a knife attack at a railway station near Jerusalem's walled Old City. Israeli military has taken precautionary measures to contain potential attacks in the West Bank city of Hebron. Meanwhile, talks have begun in Vienna, bringing together all foreign powers backing opposing sides in the Syrian war. The meeting seeks to close the gap between the US and its allies and the key allies of the Syrian government, Russia and Iran. It is, in fact, the first time that Iran has been involved in a solution for Syria. But given the complex situation, there are only downplayed expectations.
More than a dozen power heads gathering for a fresh round of talks in Vienna to discuss the over 4-year-old war in Syria. On one side are the United States, Turkey, Saudi Arabia and other Gulf nations. On the other are 2 of Syrian government's staunchest allies, Russia and Iran. With rounds of failed talks behind them, the mood at the table is that of skepticism and caution.
I'm hopeful. I don't call it optimism. I'm hopeful we can find a way forward. It's very difficult.
Let's see if the work we have done in coordination with the US, with Russia in these days, in these weeks, allows us to open this political space and creates the possibility for a follow-up, for the beginning of a process that can lead us to a political transition in Syria.
The talks are the first high-level discussions after Washington's allies dropped their objections to including Iran. The US, Turkey, Saudi Arabia and other Arab nations have refused to work with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. They are opposed to any role for him in Syria's future, but seem to have given some ground, saying that although he will have to step down, it didn't have to be immediate. Assad's supporters, however, insist the main goal of the talks must be to launch a political dialogue.
که راه حل سوریه باید مبتنی باشه بر اصولی که این اصول مورد پذیرش هم است: عدم مداخله در امور داخلی سوریه، مبارزه با تروریسم، احترام به حاکمیت و تمامیت ارضی سوریه، احترام به حق مردم سوریه برای تعیین سرنوشت.
The divide between Russia and Iran and Western and Arab nations has only deepened since Moscow began airstrikes against opposition forces in Syria a month ago. UN humanitarian chiefs 13.5 million people in Syria are still in need of aid and protection. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Myanmar will go to polls on the November of 8th, its first election since a nominally civilian government was introduced in 2011. These elections end, in fact, nearly 50 years of military rule. The elections are being monitored by observers from the European Union and the US.
Observers from the European Union began monitoring the early voting process in Myanmar on Friday. The early voting process will enable election and security staff to cast their vote, as they will not be able to do so on November 8th, the day historic polls will be held in the country. The EU will have 30 long-term observers and 62 short-term observers deployed across the country. The US-based Carter Center is also sending its observers.
We are here to deliver an assessment of the entire electoral process, not just related to the election day. So we are looking at the run-up to the elections, the campaign period. We're looking at the election day, and we're also looking at the weeks after the elections. And all of that information together will allow us to give then an informed analysis of the process.
After 49 years of military rule, many people are confused about the voting process. In fact, not many eligible people knew that an early voting process was underway.
သူတို့ဒီတစ်ချက်29ရက်နေ့ဖြစ်တယ်ဆိုတာသိတဲ့လူရှိတယ်လို့မသိတဲ့လူရှိတယ်။သိတဲ့လူကလည်းဘယ်လိုအနေအထားမျိုးမှာကြိုတင်ဆန္ဒမဲပေးနိုင်တယ်လဲ။သူတို့အဲ့ဒါတော့မသိဘူး။
Meanwhile, pre-poll violence has marred the historic process. An opposition lawmaker and 2 other people were seriously injured in an attack on Thursday. The lower house lawmaker belonged to Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy party. The attack raises security concerns for Suu Kyi, who is to hold a rally on Sunday in the heart of Yangon. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate has travelled the country galvanizing support for her party that promises sweeping changes, faster reforms and a state respectful of ethnic minorities. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now let's get you some more international news updates in Global Buzz. At least 22 people drowned in 2 shipwrecks in the Aegean Sea today as thousands of Middle Eastern migrants sought to reach the Greek islands in rough seas. The death toll of the past 3 days has reached nearly 50. The accident took place when the wooden boats sank in strong winds. 5 Maldives residents, including one believed to be involved in the attempted assassination of President Abdullah Yameen last month, have been deported from Malaysia. The suspect worked as the country's investment ambassador. The 5 were arrested on the 28th of September, the day of a speedboat explosion targeting Yameen. Maldives Vice President Ahmed Adib was arrested on Saturday in connection with that explosion. China says it will not accept a case at an arbitration court in the Netherlands over the disputed South China Sea. Vice Foreign Minister said that China believes the Philippines unilaterally presenting the case without China's authorization is not a goodwill method to resolve the dispute. And now let's change tracks and get you the latest from the world of sports in Sports Beat. The Indo-Swiss tennis combine, Osania Mirza and Martina Hingis, entered the semi-finals of the WTA finals. The pair defeated Timi Babos and Kristina Mladenovic 6-4, 7-5 in their last round-robin match. The Indo-Polish pair of Liana Pace and Lucas Kubot bowed out of the Valencia Open with a straight sets loss in the men's doubles quarterfinals. Pace Kubot lost to the unseeded Australian-Brazilian pair of Chris Guccione and Andre Sars 6-7, 4-6. Vishwanathan Anand drew his 3rd game in a row in the Bilbao Masters final chess tournament against tournament leader Wesley So of America. The defending champion Anand now has 3 points under the soccer-like scoring system and is under pressure to carve out a win in the next 3 rounds. Tennis again, and top seed Roger Federer reached the quarterfinals of the Basel International with a 3-set win over Germany's Philipp Kohlschreiber. The 6-time Basel champion won 6-4, 4-6, 6-4. Federer will now play David Goffin of Belgium in the quarterfinals. And that's all we have for you on the news tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a good weekend.